Welcome to Crossroads. President Donald Trump could soon be launching strikes in Mexico, targeting the cartels. And on a related point also, reports are saying Mexican cartels are starting to use drone military tactics because they're seeing it used between Russia and Ukraine. And they say they're not a paramilitary, but they're using military stuff. Also, another topic, Texas has now designated the Muslim Brotherhood and the Council on American-Islamic Relations as terrorist organizations. We'll be talking about these topics and a lot more today. Let's get started. Also, big news, my documentary, Truth Under Fire, The Framing of Charlie Kirk, comes out tonight. It airs 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I made this documentary because I want to set the narrative back on Charlie Kirk's legacy, really set it straight. I think Charlie's legacy has been dragged through the mud. I want to talk about what he actually represented, but also explain the hit piece machine, the system that is in place to label people, attack people, malign people, get them threatened, and then possibly get them killed. There's a very large machine for this in this country. This documentary exposes it. Now, this documentary is completely free to watch. So no matter where you are, YouTube, X, Twitter, anything, if you want to watch this documentary, it is free. All you have to do is register on epochtv.com, epochtv.com. It's been a lot of work putting this together. Also, we interviewed a lot of great people. Lucas Miles, head of the youth religious movement at Turning Point. We talked to, for example, Robbie Starbuck. We talked to, some great folks. Andy No. Really just a lot of great people. So again, it's going to be very good. I hope you all like it. The link to watch is in the description below. Let me show you the trailer for the documentary right now. How was Charlie Kirk framed by the narrative system?
An anti-Semite, as a purveyor of misinformation, as being someone on what they call the hard right.
He's been slandered and lied about by people on the left.
They want to create an atmosphere of fear where I'll stop doing what I'm doing because I'm worried that I'm going to get murdered.
Charlie Kirk was shot down on a college campus, not with a weapon in his hand, but with a microphone.
What kind of threats did Charlie face, and did he ever confide in you about these?
He would say, this is a dark time spiritually, pray for me.
Now, not only that, I'll also be hosting a special live Q&A on the documentary 9 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. So I'll see you all tonight. Link is in the description for that as well. And that's let's get started. Now, look, first of all, President Trump is saying that he could launch strikes into Mexico. And that's a big deal because, when we had the terror war before, it was far away. It's in the Middle East, it's in Iraq, it's in Afghanistan, it's not in our backyard. Trump has now designated the cartels as terrorist organizations. He wants to strike them, destroy them, wipe them out, just like we were doing in Afghanistan. He wants to target the cartels. And he has so far faced heavy pushback from officials in Mexico who do not want the United States to take out the cartels. Interesting, right? They say basically that, law and order is in place. They're saying that the drug trade is America's fault because Americans buy drugs. And even though they have some of the highest murder rates in the world and assassinations of public officials and anybody who questions the cartels, they're saying that America and even their own government would be wrong to actually go after them. But as this happens, also Mexico is under growing pressure with youth protests against cartel corruption and violence. And the youth feel otherwise. Let's put it that way. Now, the Epoch Times says this. President Donald Trump said on November 17th that he is willing to conduct lethal strikes in Mexico to stop drug trafficking. And he said, would I launch strikes into Mexico to stop drugs? Okay with me. Whatever we have to do to stop drugs, he said in the Oval Office. And added, I looked at Mexico City over the weekend. There's some big problems over there. Trump said that he is unafraid to take kinetic action, meaning physical destruction, similar to actions being taken in the Caribbean against the drug boats, which they're saying they're fishing boats. Maybe they're fishing for fentanyl, but it's hard to have a fishing boat without fishing equipment. It's hard to do commercial fishing if you don't have a net or fishing poles. And if you paint your boat blue, and it's a speedboat with like 3 to 4 motors on it, and you're not doing any fishing, but you're carrying big containers that they say contain fish, but why would you paint your boat blue with like a semi-submersible if you don't want to get lost at sea and have them not be able to find you? The only reason would be you don't want to be seen. So nothing describes these as fishing boats other than the people who want to protect them. But it says here that Trump declined to say whether he would ask Mexico for permission to strike inside the country, but he said he would have talks with the nation. It also notes the president's comments come as the United States conducted its 21st strike on an alleged drug boat. Now, 21 drug boats blown up is not a lot. It's a big deal that we're doing it, the United States, but it's not a lot. The bigger picture with this now, what did Trump say he was going to do when he was running for office? When Trump was running for office 2024, what did he say about the cartels? He said he would use the entire military for it. He put up naval blockades, which he's now done. He would use military intelligence, which he's now done, at least as far as we know. He would use the military to secure parts of the border, which he has now done by making some of the public land there, or government land, into military bases, military territory. He said he would begin targeting them, which he's now doing, and he said he would increase this, and if any country tried to stop him, he would expose the leaders of those countries and their connections to the cartels. Because lo and behold, most of Latin America is narco-terror land. Most of the governments are compromised by the cartels. Just most of them at this point, unfortunately. Because they've been able to go on for so long, and they also represent some of the biggest economies throughout Latin America. Now, in terms of what Trump is saying also, he's suggesting the United States could carry out airstrikes of cartel leaders, of cartel growing farms, of cartel factories, military assets, which they actually have paramilitary stuff there. We can blow those up, Trump is suggesting. The other thing that Trump actually announced, he said that American intelligence, they know every single home address of every single major he said just cartel figures in general. Trump says we know all of them. All of them. And that's a pretty big deal because by saying we know all of them, he's suggesting we could blow up all of them. Like when he met with this foreign official and showed him a picture of his house. He says, "Sir, why do you have a picture of my house?" He says, Trump says, "Well, you're going to have to put that together yourself." Trump's now sending the same message to the cartels throughout Latin America. And the complicated thing with the cartels is a lot of them have deep ties and corruption within the Mexican government, to the point where if you disagree with the cartels, they probably kill you, which has happened many times. Now, Fox News said this as we watch this whole controversy boil up. It says thousands of protesters swarmed Mexico City Saturday, attacking police officers and attempting to breach a barrier around the National Palace, which they put up ahead of this, which houses the federal government's executive branch, meaning the president of the country. It says plumes of tear gas filled the streets as hooded protesters dragged riot police out of formation, beat them with hammers and chains, and threw explosive devices at them. It's pretty dang serious. It says, as they were stripped of their shields and communications radios. The Secretariat of Citizen Security of Mexico announced via social media that at least 60 police officers had minor injuries and 40 officers were taken to the hospital. It notes of the 40 officers hospitalized, 36 had contusions, cuts, and minor injuries, and 4 are receiving specialized care for trauma and other injuries that are not life-threatening. So they're beating them, they're not killing anybody. Now it notes that the anti-government march, okay, I'll explain this a bit because the way the media is framing it, there are interviews with some of these Gen Z protesters who are saying something very different on why they're doing it. This is not anti-government, it is anti-cartel. And if they want to call it anti-government, well, if you want to call the Mexican government part of the Mexican cartel, fine. But these are not anti-government marches. This is because the government in Mexico has been protecting the cartels. They're not allowing them to be destroyed. They're allowing the cartels to operate. They're doing some operations against them. But the reality is, anytime a government official tries running for office in Mexico saying they're going to stop the cartels, they get assassinated. So you can't do it. and they're blocking American actions to actually do it. There's a plan in place to do it. They're stopping it, and the youth are mad. The youth are basically saying, I thought you guys wanted to get rid of the cartels. Have you been lying to us this whole time? So that's the real story here. But Fox News says the anti-government march, which became violent at Zakola Square, was organized by members of Gen Z, those born between the late 90s and early 2010s. Important on that also, this was sparked, which they're not really saying here, this was sparked after yet another candidate was murdered in Mexico because they were talking about going after the cartels. You have mayors of cities getting murdered because they're saying they want to go after the cartels. Basically, the youth are recognizing this now. And it says here, the protesters told the Associated Press they were rallying against corruption and safety concerns. So you're getting that, all right? This is how the narrative is, right? Anti-government protests against corruption and safety concerns. So what does that actually mean? The thing they're protesting on corruption is that government officials in Mexico have been corrupted through their work with the cartels. They take kickbacks, they take money. Some of them are members of the cartel. I've even known sources who give me evidence showing that you even have major figures in Mexico who are like key holders for the cartels, and they're like the head of the police department. That's the unfortunate reality in Mexico. Tijuana, for example. And I know it's also by safety concerns. What is the safety concern they're protesting against? Well, they're probably unhappy the cartels are carrying out massive waves of threats and violence and murders throughout the country. And of course, going door to door, there were reports I heard when I was investigating the border crisis, cartels going to the homes of people saying, give me one of your children. And if you don't, we're going to slit the child's throat in front of you right now. And they were using the children to help facilitate mass illegal immigration into the United States, because if you send a kid with them, they get easier access into the country. And then when they bring the kid in, well, what happens? Well, you have 300,000, 400,000 disappeared children. Hey, interesting, right? Cartels were doing that. Cartels were killing people. They've been discovering mass graves. In fact, one of my good friends, Oscar Ramirez, I did the reporting in Panama with him. He's been reporting in Mexico. He's a Mexican journalist. He's been saying they've been finding mass graves of the people who could not pay the cartels to be trafficked into America. Hey, $5,000 up, it's $7,000, price increase, pay us or we're gonna shoot you and throw you in that pit. That's what's been happening in Mexico, and people are sick of it. So that's the nature of these protests, which are being framed as anti-government protests against corruption and against safety concerns. Right? Now, on this point also, Mexico's president just reiterated that the country will be working with Trump despite the protests, despite everything else. She's saying they're not going to work with Trump on any of these planned operations. Daily Mail said this: Donald Trump's threat of U.S. military strikes against drug cartels inside Mexico is a non-starter. Not going to happen. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said Tuesday. She said it's not going to happen. She said at a press conference responding to Trump's warning that he would do whatever we have to do, including strikes within the territory. So she's basically just rolling back Trump, saying, look, Trump is saying he's going to do something. We're not going to let Trump do anything. And the old drug flow killing 70,000 to 100,000 Americans every year is going to continue until Mexico decides otherwise. Now, speaking of the Mexican cartels, they've also now begun using drone military tactics. And they're learning this from Ukraine, actually. I'll be speaking more about what this entails after we come back from a quick break.
All right, just a pause here for a super quick moment. You are, of course, watching Crossroads with Joshua Philipp. I'm just here to share a message about American Hartford Gold, my own personal gold and silver bullion dealer. Now, obviously, the recent tariffs have made the markets super turbulent and volatile. With every new piece of tariff news, the markets seem to either crash up or crash down. And of course, it's worth mentioning that these conditions don't only affect Wall Street. They affect all of us through our investments and our retirement accounts. That's why I'd like to introduce you to a company that I trust and I myself use to secure my own savings, American Hartford Gold. They specialize in helping Americans move our assets into something tangible, into something you can actually hold, which is physical gold and physical silver, two precious metals that act as a hedge against all those decisions being made in Washington, D.C. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have thousands of 5-star reviews, and they make the whole buying process super simple. Your metals can be shipped directly to your door, or you can transfer your current retirement account to a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And the best part is that right now, American Hartford Gold is offering an exclusive offer. When you call them today and you mention the name Joshua, you could receive up to $15,000 in free silver with your initial investment. Take advantage of their special offer. You can either just call them at 877-260-2764 or text Joshua to 65532. All their information will also be down in the description box below. And now, back to Crossroads.
Welcome back. Mexican cartels are now beginning to use drone tactics that they've been seeing in the war between Russia and Ukraine. Defense News says this, says last month, 3 drones rigged with explosives detonated outside a prosecutor's office in Tijuana, Mexico, besieging 6 cars parked outside with a blast of nails, BBs, and metal fragments. An attempted assassination, it seems, yet again of a Mexican government official. It says the attack was orchestrated by a cartel, Mexican government officials confirmed, and targeted an anti-kidnapping unit of the Baja State Attorney General's office. So the Mexican cartels want to continue carrying out kidnappings so much that if a government official there tries to stop them, they will literally use drone bombs and try to blow them up. It notes this is the latest high-profile example of first-person view drones being used by cartels to replicate military tactics being used in Ukraine. It notes that Defense News previously reported that members of Latin American drug cartels have joined Ukraine's foreign fighter volunteer units to gain FPV drone training. This is something the cartels do, not just, this isn't like Ukraine's working with them, the cartels do this even in the United States. What the Mexican cartels do, they'll send people of the cartels to join militaries in different countries with the intent of learning military tactics. So the cartels get military training by having their guys join the military. This, in this case, joining the drone training programs. They then come back and they train the cartels on military tactics of other countries, again, from the training they actually learn doing it. This is how the cartels operate. This is how the cartels do their military training. They do this as well in the United States. Because America, we allow non-citizens to join our military. In fact, you can become a citizen by joining the U.S. military. They have their guys come here. They join, special forces. They join special operations. They learn these things. They go back to Mexico. They work as sicarios or whatever else, and then they, assassins, and then they train the Mexican cartels on all of our special forces tactics and things like that. And we let them do it. But now they're doing this in Ukraine as well. It says earlier this year, a cartel ambush using an explosive drone in a border state of Chihuahua sent 2 Mexican military service members and 1 police officer to the hospital. 3 drones were subsequently seized. It says attacks made by explosive-equipped drones surged to over 260 in 2023. In 2024, a drone ambush was reportedly followed by an infantry-style attack. An infantry, meaning they used a bomb drone and then used a ground assault because, again, they function like a military in a remote community in Mexico, according to AP. And again, a lot of this is assassinations. A lot of this is targeted attacks. It's that kind of thing. And Mexico says, hey, Trump, don't go after them because that'd be mean. We don't want to have violence in our country. Another topic, though, Texas is dealing with something of its own. Texas has now designated the Muslim Brotherhood and the Council on Islamic Relations, CARE, as terrorist organizations. Now, this is from the official website of the Texas Governor, Greg Abbott. He said this. It says, Governor Greg Abbott today, that's yesterday, designated the Muslim Brotherhood and the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, as foreign terrorist organizations and transnational criminal groups. So he's designated them not just as terrorists, but also as basically gangs, right? Transnational criminal organizations like mafias. He notes this designation authorizes heightened enforcement against both organizations and their affiliates and prohibits them from purchasing or acquiring land in Texas, which they've been trying to do, actually. I'll get into it in a minute. And he said this, quote, the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE have long made their goals clear: to forcibly impose Sharia law and establish Islam's mastership of the world, conquering the world, in other words. It says the actions taken by the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE to support terrorism across the globe and subvert our laws through violence, intimidation, and harassment are unacceptable. He said, today I designated the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE as foreign terrorist organizations and transnational criminal organizations. He says these radical extremists are not welcomed in our state and are now prohibited from acquiring any real property interest in Texas. Now, on that point, let me show you a bit more from the official announcement. Just summing it up, it notes that when the Muslim Brotherhood was founded close to 100 years ago, its founder declared the intent, declaring that jihad was a necessity and it required fighting people of other beliefs, dismantling power for people of other beliefs, beating them, quote, plundering their wealth, quote, destroying their places of worship, and also destroying their religious icons. So it was created with the stated intent to destroy other religions, and created with the intent to beat people, use violence as the tool for this. And that's what they've been doing, in fact. It also notes the group has local branches that carry out terrorism, like designated terrorism in other countries. So even though here they're more of a political organization, in other countries they're actual, like, physical terrorist organizations. It also notes that branches of it are already limited or prohibited in countries including Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and others. So isn't it interesting? The Muslim Brotherhood is outlawed in many Muslim countries because they're deemed to be a terrorist organization. Interesting. Now, it also says here that CARE was founded as a front organization for Hamas and a support network in the United States. It also details that the federal government has, to an extent, already recognized this, although not fully restricting CARE, but disengaging from it in some ways. And again, Texas, now this is the official stance. They're now designating CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood as gangs and terrorists. And that's going to be a big deal because there's actually talk of this on the federal level as well. They've been discussing it. We'll see if they ever do anything about it. Another part of the reason they're doing this is that in Texas, there's Epoch City. You have individuals trying to fund an Islamic city, basically. And there's been allegations of the ties of, again, these now designated terrorist organizations being part of it. And Texas is saying they will not allow foreign law into America, Sharia law into America. Now, on another topic, President Donald Trump met with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, which again outlaws these groups, where he announced that the country will be increasing its pledge from $600 billion in investment to around $1 trillion in investment. Watch this.
Today and tomorrow, we're going to announce that we are going to increase that $600 billion to almost $1 trillion of investment, real investment and real opportunity by details in many areas. And the agreement that we are signing today in many areas in technology, in AI, in earth materials, magnet, etc., that will create a lot of investment opportunities.
So you are doing that now. You're saying to me now that the 600 billion will be 1 trillion.
Definitely, because what we are signing, it will facilitate that. And
I like that very much.
That's a big deal. You might remember when Trump did his whole tour of the Middle East, he met with the Saudi Crown Prince, he met with the heads of other countries in the region. He was talking about a peace deal, making peace again with Israel. He talked about, of course, the Abraham Accords. And you might remember Trump was greeted like royalty, right? He had a jet escort, everything, the whole 9 yards. They treated Trump like royalty, which Trump likes, by the way. But also during his meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince, Trump took him for a brief tour around the White House. And people were commenting on Trump's choice of where to show him, because this included a stop by the wall of presidential photos. Trump had a photo of every president put up along a stretch of the White House grounds. And during this, Trump took him and showed him the photo where Trump had a portrait of the auto pen in place of President Biden. Watch this. that was Trump. So again, Trump is alleging that too many items were signed by AutoPen during the Biden administration, and argued that while Biden was on vacation a lot, that there was somebody else running the office and they were using a machine to sign his signature. There has been evidence of that. Some individuals have come forward alleging that they were using the AutoPen and so on. But Trump is kind of making a joke about it. He's kind of memeing about it, but he's also kind of serious about it. A lot of us thought it was just a joke. It's kind of not, but it should be noted this is also kind of Trump's humor, I guess. Remember that when Donald Trump met with Kim Jong-un in North Korea and Trump had been calling him Rocket Man? Remember Rocket Man, little Rocket Man? He had his tweets and stuff like that. What did Trump do when he met with Kim Jong-un? Trump actually gave him a copy of Elton John's song Rocket Man. He does things like this. Now, do you think that's in good taste and bad taste? I don't know. You let me know. Tell me what your thoughts are. That said, questions, comments, anything you want to talk about, leave it in the chat. Let's jump into some questions. Oh, man. Anyways, I think it's Trump's humor. There was the time also when he met with the Navajo in the White House during his first term in office. Remember, they're all like a bunch of elderly World War II veterans. He met with the Navajo code talkers. And he's talking to one of these like really old men. And he's like, we have a Native American in Congress. We call her Pocahontas, which was of course the name he had made up for one of the members of Congress who alleged that she was Native, but wasn't really, not that much at least. Anyways, good start of the week. First question here, Jeremy Barker, midweek. Jeremy Barker is saying, without U.S. citizens using the drugs, there would be no need to manufacture them. Supply and demand, capitalism at its finest. I mean, to an extent, because you can feed people poison. If you poison if you poison a glass and you say, okay, I'm going to give this to your kid. Hey, kid, you want some poison? It has a bit of poison. It'll make you feel good. It has poison in it. It might not, it's killed some people, might not kill you. But hey, kid, you want this? Give me $20. I'll buy it. I'll sell it to you. And the kid buys the poison, drinks it, and dies. Who's at fault for that? Is the kid the one who is at fault for that? Or is the person who sold him the poison at fault for it? You tell me, simple moral issue. Who is at fault for selling a child poison that kills the child? What do you think? This is an accurate analogy because that's happening to a lot of kids in America with fentanyl right now. With fentanyl right now, what you have happening is kids think they're buying Adderall or they think they're smoking some pot or whatever like that, and they take a hit of it and it's laced with fentanyl and it kills them. Or, I mean, when I've been investigating this stuff, I met with guys who worked in this industry. I interviewed drug dealers as well. But I met somebody who worked working on going after the cartels. And he was telling me that they had a case where kids were, buying Adderall. And because of the sloppy way the cartels had mixed it with fentanyl, which nobody knew, 1 out of every 4 pills would have killed somebody. So it wasn't like you would overdose. It wasn't like, you'd take too many. It was that the normal dose would without a doubt kill somebody. I interviewed a mother who lost her son to this, beautiful, wonderful neighborhood, really affluent kid. He was coming up, he was into hockey, great kid, went out one day and he died, killed by fentanyl. And so, the question is, like, to what extent do you say somebody is evil or wrong for selling somebody something that they know is going to kill them? You know what I mean? If you have a guy coming into your neighborhood and he's trying to sell drugs to your kids, do you get mad at your kids or do you get mad at the guy trying to sell them drugs? If you know a guy coming into your neighborhood and he says, hey, I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna make some money, but I'm gonna kill like maybe 10 of your kids. It's their fault. They're the ones making friends, but they're the ones. I'm going to kill like maybe 10 of them, but it's their fault because they're the ones who want me here. Who's at fault? The guy doing that or the kids? Who do you blame? And so this is the way I see this narrative coming out of Mexico. They're giving a moral argument for what they view as an economy that is designed to kill. That's designed to kill Americans, designed to make them money. And what it's doing also is it's creating a massive economy in Mexico. Now, I think if Mexico actually did care about this, if they wanted to stop the violence, they would stop it. They have the options to. They're choosing not to. You could say domestically in Mexico, they cannot do it because all the officials who try to stop it get assassinated. They send a bomb drone through your window and blow you up and kill you. But when America is offering to do it, I don't think they're going to send a bomb drone through Trump's windows, put it that way. So I don't think Mexico has an opportunity right now to get rid of it. The question is, will they do it? And you also see the way the media is painting this, right? Oh, Trump is killing these poor suspects. I don't know. Is he right or wrong? I know there's different takes on it. Troy and M, you're saying, well, in trying to eradicate evil, can we become the enemy? Careful. That is a good question, too. It's another question, too, of how far do you want to go with it? I will say the cartels don't just affect people who buy drugs. That's the other side of it. The cartels affect people who are innocent bystanders. Look, I've talked to people who've been through this. When I was in the Darien Gap and, you meet a young girl who can't talk because she's traumatized because she just got gang raped by a bunch of cartel members. It's like, oh, was she buying drugs from them? Is it her fault she bought drugs? No, she didn't buy drugs from the cartel. They kidnapped her and raped her. Is it an American's fault if a young woman's going for a jog and gets her head smashed in with a rock after being raped by a cartel member? Did she buy the drugs? Are we evil if we deport? Maybe not even execute. They just deport them. Are we evil for that? Are we evil if a cartel member comes to America and starts a drug grow, in California or somewhere else, and then uses the money to shut down the competition? And what is, even if you believe in legalized stuff, shuts down the legal marijuana grows because they can't compete, and then starts corrupting our local officials, bribing government officials, spreading their corruption. Are we to blame for that, or are they? And to what extent are we wrong for trying to stop that? To what extent do you need to? What is the degree of action you need to take to stop people like that? Well, arresting them doesn't work because they go to the jails and they create drug gangs, or they break out like El Chapo did twice. Finding them doesn't work because they make more money than anybody selling drugs. That doesn't work. Asking them nicely doesn't work. We're at a point where I don't know if there's any other solution other than violence. And they're so widespread to the point where they train as military. They literally send guys to train in our military. I'd say corrupting our military by doing that. And they even recruit our guys sometimes with like PTSD to go work for them. So they're doing that. Is that our fault or theirs? They go to Ukraine, learn to do, that kind of stuff. I've even back more than 10 years ago, I had reports that they were working with Hezbollah, right? Terrorist organizations, doing trainings. They believe that they own America, that America was taken from them, which wasn't. It was technically, you could argue that Spain might own part of it, but it was because the Mexicans overthrew the Spanish government, and the Spanish government was what owned the Western state. Spain, right? The Spanish government owned the Western states, and basically the Western states didn't want to be under the new Mexican government in Santa Ana. Who do you blame for that, right? They have systems of education. They have communist schools all throughout Mexico, actually, and they teach them these narratives, and they think they're entitled to something, and they think they're morally right to rob, kill, and make money off Americans using crime. I'd say it's terrible for them. It has corrupted their entire country. It's terrible for them. It makes it so they can't live peaceful lives like law-abiding citizens. It's terrible for them because it's created entire cultures of crime. And I would agree we have problems here in the United States too. Frankly, if Trump were to go after the gangs in America in the same way he goes after the cartels, great. Because I think that if we don't stop them, they're going to be the same corrupting force here as they have been through all of Latin America. And that's generally how I see it. Nathan Lechshrine, 1875, he said, "You've also got to realize that the cartels build schools and maintain order in places where the Mexican government fails to do so. It's part of the picture." Yeah, I'm aware of that. But it's a little more complicated. Let me tell you a story. So I knew a guy who had a girlfriend in Mexico, right? He had a girlfriend in San Diego, but the girl was from Mexico. The place where she was from was a cartel-run town. Like as you mentioned, the cartels ran the schools, the cartels ran the hospitals, and they justify it saying, we're the Robin Hoods, we're killing the rich, we're killing the Americans, and we're giving to the poor, the Mexicans. So this white boyfriend, hey, come visit my family in Mexico. The white boyfriend goes down there. The Mexican cartels have patrols where they look for, they're the police. They're also the police. They saw, a white guy wandering around a place where there aren't any white guys. A white American guy, what are you doing here? They abduct him and they're gonna kill him, right? And eventually find out, the family says, "Oh no, that's so-and-so's boyfriend. He's visiting. Don't kill him," and they let him go. But that's what it's like in these neighborhoods. The cartels, as you mentioned, they are the government. The cartels are the government. The cartels are the police. The cartels are the hospitals. The cartels are the schools. The cartels are the food drives, and that's how they do it. Now, do we maintain that? Do we say, okay, Mexico, we understand that you've decided to not govern part of your country. You've let cartels do cartel education in schools, and basically your system is propped up by drugs. What do? Do we just say, well, you know what? Maybe we just let you do it. What's 100,000 Americans a year, for the sake of your well-being? We will sacrifice 100,000 Americans and, just create derelict cities and stuff like that, because it makes your life better. Would it be morally right for us to do that? I think that's how I see this. The other thing too is that it doesn't necessarily create a happy life for people in those communities. In fact, there have been a lot of vigilante movements in Mexico where people have gotten sick of it, and they've tried stopping the cartels, because the cartels extort people, the cartels kill people, the cartels recruit the children. Hey, go to school with the cartel. They recruit the kids to become part of the gangs, and it's like military conscription, and they just force the kids to join the gangs. You want your daughter to be a prostitute, and you want your kid to be a drug dealer, and you think that's a great way of life? Like, who would want that? And so you've had in Mexico, people get sick of it. They try to stop them. They actually do. They've killed a lot of these guys. And then the government of Mexico stops the vigilantes, not the cartels. They stop the vigilantes. And that's what's happened. You let it go on for long enough, what happens? Every person of power is either afraid to speak out or they're in the pockets of the gangs, meaning the gangs control the entire country. Is that a good state for a country to be in? You know what I mean? And I don't think so. And the other thing is, what happens if you allow it to continue? What will happen to America if you allow that to happen? I will tell you, if America allows this to continue, we will become just like Mexico. Why is that? Because as much as Americans, we like to think that we're, I agree. I believe in American exceptionalism. I think, we have the strongest military in the world. We have a good, at least we used to, we're kind of fighting for it now. We have a good cultural base. We're a very religious country. Well, guess what? So is Latin America. Latin America, almost the exact same racial mix as America. You have a lot of freed slaves. You have, African. You have a lot of people from, you have the native population. You have a lot of Portuguese, a lot of Germans somehow, and a lot of people from Spain, right? because they were started as Spanish colonies, actually before even the founding of the United States. The racial mix is very similar. The cultural mix is very similar. The values are very similar. They're Catholic for the most part. The only real difference between America and many countries in Latin America, because a lot of them are democracies as well, the only major difference is that we're a predominantly Protestant country, right? While they're predominantly Catholic. And what does that mean? You know, we might think we're immune to ever becoming like that. We're not. And in fact, the model to tear down America involves that. That's why the CCP set it up. The Chinese Communist Party, under Mao Zedong, starting the drug trade, did this intentionally. They modeled it after the Opium Wars. And people want to say, well, evil America doing the Opium Wars. America was not involved in it. People just don't know their history anymore. America, you could blame the UK a little bit, but no, America wasn't involved with that. Mao Zedong modeled it after that. He went through Cuba, they ran it through Cuban intelligence, and they spread it throughout Latin America. It created a lot of problems for Latin America. A lot of the original cartels or groups like Shining Path, they were trained in the Soviet Union and trained in China. They're Maoist. They're narco-terrorist organizations. They're Maoists. They're communists. And they've used this to create corruption, to make money. Let me explain to you how the system works, right? This is how you destroy a country with criminality. This is how you do it. This is the model. You start a crime circuit. The crime circuit makes money, right? You make a lot of money. What is the natural enemy of criminals? Well, law enforcement, right? The judges, the prosecutors, the local politicians saying he's going to stop the crime, put it all down. The police officers on the ground. You have a lot of money, they don't. How do you solve this problem? Hey, buddy, how would you like to make a lot of money? Okay, all you got to do is don't look right tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Don't stop the white van tomorrow, with the guy with sunglasses. Okay, I can make $200. Why not? You know what I mean? And that's what it does. Eventually, you start having people say, no, I will not do that. They kill them, right? And then they keep doing that. What happens as that continues? All the people, all the police, all the judges, all the prosecutors, all the politicians who were good people, who said, I will not take that money, are dead. You killed them all. Then what happens? The ones who remain work for the cartels. Then what happens? The cartels say, well, that's not enough. I want to actually have political power. So what do? Well, what do they have? A lot of money and a lot of people working for them. So what do? They make other deals and they pour money into it, and they can have politicians running for office who are their people. They can have a sheriff running for office who is their guy. They can have a prosecutor running for office who's their guy. And then what happens? Candidates come up who challenge their guy. Obviously, what do people want? They want violence to stop. They want their kids to not be murdered and kidnapped. They don't want to deal with this anymore. Why did the cartels blow up the anti-kidnapping guy in Tijuana? Or was it Chihuahua, right? Why did they do that? Because the cartels kidnap people in Mexico and people don't want it. So you have these politicians and candidates who come up saying, we're going to stop this, we're going to fight it. The cartel has their guy. What do they do to protect their guy and make sure their guy wins? They threaten all of these people or they murder them. Say, hey, stop running for office or you're dead or your family's dead. And the ones who don't end up dead because they kill them. And that's been happening over and over and over and over and over again in Mexico. In fact, in some areas, you have like close to a dozen people like this recently. Now, what happens if you let that continue? They will grow it. They will expand it. And now the challenge to that is the cartel, other people want to do it, so that's why you get cartel violence, because they're fighting each other. But beyond the cartel violence, the corruption you get from this is not just drugs. The corruption is political. The corruption is the corruption of the law. The corruption is the corruption of the schools, where kids are being groomed to become part of that system. Like, why would you want your kid raised by a bunch of terrorists? Would you want your kid raised by a bunch of gang members? No. And they'll provide basic services to maintain some support, because what's the easiest way? How do you create slavery? How do you make someone your slave? You make them dependent on you, right? You make it so they cannot live without you. You make it so they cannot get by without you giving them food, without you putting a roof over their head or giving them health care, whatever else. And so the cartels do that too. It's not because they're benign. It's not because they're good. It's because they're using it as a system of control. If we allow this to continue, it will spread into America. And we face a lot of threats in this country, but that is one of them that is already on our streets. And you can see it. You can see the gangs. In Times Square, not too far from right now, you have them running rampant. I was walking there the other day, I saw them. You have South American gangs, and police can't do anything about it. Because why? Local politicians say they can't do anything about it. At what degree will those kids grow up and become powerful gang members? At what point will those kids grow up and they're making money through the cartels and they're hiring the next generation who are just like them? If each one of them grooms a certain number, how big is it going to get? We already have this in America. And if we don't stop it, we're going to end up just like Latin America. We're going to end up just like Mexico, because that's how the system works. Lucy Park, 1899, you're saying, what's wild is man on street interviews in Mexico had citizens asking for Trump to intervene. I saw that. I watched some of those videos, actually. And again, that's the other picture of it, right? When you hear the political side of it, or like the college professor side of it, they're like, well, the cartels do this. They justify it, right? But when you talk to the guy on the street, what is the experience? I'm afraid for my life. I'm afraid for my child's life. My friend was murdered. My friend's daughter was kidnapped. My friend's child had their throat slit in front of their mom because the mom wouldn't give them to the cartels to be used for human trafficking. That's the experience. I know people like this personally. I have a friend from Colombia, in fact. Her grandfather got one of those calls, hey, we kidnapped your son, give us $50,000 or whatever. He didn't think it was real. It turned out it was, and they killed his grandson. They murdered his grandson. And they do it in terrible ways. One of the big ways they do it is they inject Drano into you because they think it's like lethal injection, like humane. Imagine a little kid having Drano for cleaning pipes, Drano inject into their veins. What do you think that's going to do to a human body? They do that. The cartels do that. And, I don't know. What do we do? It's just business, right? I think there needs to be some morality with business. This is why we have laws. We're not like anarcho-capitalists, right? You can't just do whatever the heck you want with business. Like, there are some guardrails with it. There's a difference between capitalism and criminalism. You know what I mean? Like, we got to draw the line somewhere. There's a difference between the two. And if somebody needs to violate the law, murder people, drug people, harm people, kidnap people in order to make money, that's not normal business. That's just criminality. There's a line between criminality and capitalism. Like, we got to draw the line somewhere. We're not just morally absent people, right? Kristen Cast 1, you're saying, how many times will we sell weapons to our friends only to have those weapons used against us in the future? America doesn't have a very good track record with that. Wait. America's friends are not that reliable, okay? I think you're referring to Ukraine. And of course, the Mexican cartels sending guys to Ukraine to go learn how to do the drones. In their defense, again, the Mexican cartels do that here as well. It's not like, I don't think it's like Ukraine is working with the cartels. The Mexican cartels do that. They'll have their guys travel to places, and they'll join the militaries to learn different tactics. They want to learn the drone tactics of the Ukrainian military, which is why they're going there. So that's why it's happening. Moldy Guard, you're saying, do you think America should help Mexico, or do you lean more towards America first equals America only? Yeah, you know, I've been following this debate. I know there's a lot of people saying I'm America only. You know, we don't need anybody else. I understand. Let me explain my viewpoint on this. First, I'll explain a bit of how that works, right? So, you know, Trump is going on this whole narrative of America first, right? We should put the interests of Americans before the interests of other countries as we deal with international relations, trade deals, and so on. If you're ripping us off, if we're trading at a loss, we're going to renegotiate the trade deal to where at the very least nobody loses anything, right? At the very least, get some equilibrium. In fact, Trump would argue that his tariffs, although some would question it, the tariffs are meant to offset trade imbalances. It's reciprocal, right? That's the word they're using, is reciprocal. We're matching the damage, basically. Now, I believe in that personally. I think the country having politicians who serve the interests of American citizens is good. I don't like the idea of a politician saying they're going to serve the interests or represent people who are not Americans. Why are we electing them in that case? I think that if you have people coming in here and they're saying these are the needs of my people, these are the needs we need to address, and every politician everywhere did that, the world would probably be a better place. The difference is when you have a politician go in somewhere and they're saying, I'm not going to serve the interests of my people, I'm going to serve my own interests, or I'm going to serve the interest of a country I immigrated from, or I'm going to serve the interest of a country I'm getting kickbacks from or have investments in, or so on, or a country that can't take care of its own, and so we're just going to prop them up and keep it like that forever. I don't like that. I think that if you had it so that every elected official or king, whatever, maybe we'll go that one day, every government official in the world represented the interests and the well-being of their citizens, what kind of world do you end up with? You end up with a world where domestically they try to create a good life for the people who live there. Internationally, they want to make deals, they want to get trade. If they want to bring something in, it needs to be a benefit enough to be worth the cost. But they want to make sure that their culture, their values, their way of life is not altered by foreign interest. I support that. I believe that the entire world would be a better place if every country were to do that. That doesn't mean we don't have trade. That doesn't mean we don't have tourism. That doesn't mean we don't have migration. It means you have governments that actually care about their own people, right? On the other side of it too, I would say that there's different narratives on how we term globalism, right? There's evil globalism, and then there's the Pax Americana, as I would describe it. The reality of the world is there's a battle for systems taking place. You could argue that, hey, there are some countries that do represent their people, and part of the interest of their people is to destroy the people of other places, right? They want to wage a war, they want to invade, they want to carry out genocide like you're watching in like Sudan right now. They want to wipe out a religion they don't like. They want to suppress the speech of people who disagree with, the party in power. There's that in the world, right? There's a lot of that in the world. And frankly, a lot of human history has been like that. There's a little white spot, and I don't mean like nationality-wise. I mean like a nice little spot in world history that has not been like that, and we call that the Pax Americana. The idea that people are endowed with God-given rights is an American idea. This is not something you find historically. Maybe it won't be something you find in the future if we decide that way. The reality is America represents something. We represent the idea that people have God-given rights, and these are, what is it, right? Basically, I'd say the only ones we really enforce are the right to believe what you want, the right to say what you want, and the right to, well, I guess you can't defend yourself everywhere, but let's just keep it at that. You can believe what you want and you can say what you want. The most basic form of human rights you can possibly have. And part of the Pax Americana, where America has been kind of acting as the world police, is to maintain that. You could say in other ways, maybe the right to life would be part of this. Hey, Sudan, if you're going to let people if you're going to let, Islamist extremists go and massacre Christians, and you can see the piles of bodies and blood literally by satellite, by the way, and the huge line of cars carrying all the bodies of the who knows how many people in literal, just massive like lakes of blood. You just let that happen, we might do something. We might have to go there and kill the guys doing that, or we might have to sanction your country. America has maintained a certain degree of human rights by doing this. Hey, looks like you've suppressed the free speech of your citizens. Your citizens are not allowed to have freedom of belief. America, if you want to trade with us, we believe in these rights, and we're not going to do business with you if you decide to seize the right of belief from your citizens. And what do? We might not invade you, but we will sanction you. We'll make it so you can't use the American financial system. We'll make it so our companies cannot trade with you. And we'll make it so that anybody who's on our system also cannot trade with you. We'll shut you down economically. Your personal interest is gone. That's what America represents. Now, on that front, I very much believe that America represents something globally. On that front, I believe America should maintain that type of allegiance of countries that respect human rights. I think America should maintain an allegiance and an international unity of countries that have human rights, right? You're not murdering your people, you're not carrying out genocide, that have freedom of speech and that have freedom of belief. I would like to see the Second Amendment too, but let's be honest, they're probably not going to do that. I like it, but I understand most people in other countries made it. That's a little too far for them, right? They're not ready for that much freedom. They're not ready for it. Maybe one day they will be. But on this front, right? I think America should maintain an international standard, a base standard of how a government can treat their citizens. Because the other reality is this: you have a very powerful alternate world government trying to get rid of it. That's the other reality. During the Soviet Union, you had the Comintern, the Communist International, and the Soviet Union and the Chinese Communist Party and Cuba and a handful of our enemies were trying to spread communism globally, destroying religion, putting people in gulags, eliminating free speech, massacring people, 10 million people here, 20 million people here. And that was the reality of the communist world, 100 million to 150 million people killed. And aside from these systems that create just mass state slavery and mass suppression of basic human rights. Now, if America were to pull back from the world stage and say America only, as a self-interested American, I'd say we'd probably be better off, okay? America could stop having to spend our money on maintaining military bases in every corner of the world. We could stop having to, give free food to everybody and prop up the militaries of other countries and send people money for whatever heck, welfare or weapons, and a lot. There's still a lot I think is overspending. I don't think it's all great. I think a lot of this has problems with it. But let's just say we got rid of all of it, right? America keeps to itself. We deport every last illegal immigrant, and we establish, an America-only country. American culture, American values, American way of life, American businesses, American trade, American interest. We don't care. You want to step across the border, we're going to launch you back. You know what I mean? No, none of that, right? America would probably we would, in all honesty, probably be better off. Trade-wise, in terms of some things, right? Trade-wise, we wouldn't be losing money on business deals to every country on earth. Resource-wise, America basically has everything we need. Food, oil. Like, we don't really need a whole lot. America can actually get by fine without many other countries. We're one of the only places on earth that's like this. And we're also very hard to invade. Anybody ever play Risk and you try to attack America? It's not easy. But what would happen is that the American idea would die, and a new form of tyranny would sweep the world. Right? So right now you have the Chinese Communist Party. They're trying to promote the, they call it the China model. That's the social credit system, that's digital ID, that's digital currency, that's mass surveillance, that's absolute internet censorship, that's censorship of all entertainment, that's where every business works for the government. There's no privacy, no human rights. If the CCP or some corrupt official wants to make some money, they can grab a kid off the street, murder them, and harvest their organs. And if you try to protest it, they're going to throw you in the gulag. That's the China model, right? It's already spreading. The CCP, if they're allowed to, will make that the global government, and that's the reality. In fact, they have a word for it. They call it multi-stakeholder capitalism is one of it, but they also call it the multipolar world order, right? Because this is how they define it. They say that peace under America, Pax Americana, is the unipolar world order, the American idea and its influence and its its support from through sanctions and otherwise. They call it the unipolar world order. They want to tear down the unipolar world order, which means tear down America, and create the multipolar world order, where the CCP model is the main system of government, but every country is kind of having an equal seat at the table of globalism, and America is just one tiny seat there. We're one vote among hundreds, and the vote of America counts as one vote of hundreds, and we have no power. If you want to destroy America, you don't need to bomb us. If you want to destroy America, you don't need to kill us. If you want to destroy America, all you need to do is eliminate what we represent. And that is how they want to kill America. And so on that front, I do believe in America first, just like I believe all countries should put the interest of their people first. But I don't believe America only. I believe America represents something, and the world would be a terrible, dark place without it. James Dyson, you're saying, Josh, did you ever go see the Orson Welles movie Touch of Evil? I didn't. I forgot. You mentioned to me before. I totally forgot about it. I'm going to make a note of it because I think it was you said in the chat before that you recommended it. We were talking about dystopian movies, I think. I'll make a note of it this time. Thank you for the recommendation. Martin McKenzie, you're saying the enemy of criminals is a free, prosperous population. That is true. What defines evil? Okay. So let's have this is kind of funny conversation. What is evil? How do we define it? Evil tends to be, if you want to talk about it like metaphysically, evil is an inversion of a upright moral system. It's just doing the opposite. That's all it is. So if you were to take Christianity and flip it upside down, that would be Satanism, right? If you take the 10 Commandments and you practice the opposite, that's Satanism. That's how you do it. In every country, you have a religion, for the most part, which establishes a certain moral code. And the moral code allows for the general well-being of the nation. Because it establishes certain values on what's right, what's wrong, how do we interact with each other, what will hurt other people, what is offensive, what is polite. We have culture, we have basic, standards and these things. And that's the standard, and doing the opposite is how we define evil or bad behavior, right? You just invert what's there. I'm getting somewhere with this as it relates to your question. Communism is a tool to manufacture evil. And this may sound kind of crazy, but this is actually what it is. So what is the basis of communism? It's dialectical materialism. What is dialectical materialism? It's identify, contradict, and eliminate the middle. So you identify a value, you contradict it, you flip it upside down, and then you say that there's no middle ground. And so you then use that inversion, you just flip it upside down, you use that inversion to attack the incumbent moral value, the incumbent cultural value, or the incumbent thing that you're trying to tear down. In communism, like there was the Cultural Revolution in China where they did this across the board. In America, the communists have tried doing it issue by issue, tear down the family, tear down the church, tear down, basic interracial relations, tear that down. Look at the pillars that support the society, invert them. Hey, wives should hate their husbands, neighbors should hate their neighbors, children should rebel against their parents. There's no such thing as gender. Anybody who believes in gender is a racist or a Nazi or something. And so you eliminate the middle. Anybody who's not with me down here is a fascist. They're a Nazi. When the fascists and the Nazis were socialists too, right? So it's a false argument, but regardless. And that's how they do it, you see? So what is the nature of evil? How does evil maintain itself in the world? What is the nature of good? Good is able to sustain itself. Good is sustainable. Good means you work. Good means you take care of your own. Good means you wake up early and you toil the field and you live and you prosper, right? You sow the fruits of the earth and you prosper. You have dominion over the earth, right? And you create good. You flourish. Good people build things. Good people create good where they go. Good people are kind to people. They create communities. Good people do this, right? I'm not saying that every person who works is a good person. It's one element of it. But what is the nature of an evil person? Evil cannot sustain itself. Evil will always lead to failure. It always will. And so when you have somebody who's evil, the only way they can succeed is by seizing from good people. That's why you have theft. That's why you have murder. That's why you have these things. Evil people cannot have things without taking them. And if you understand the way communism works, what does it do? It creates evil, right? You need to take, everybody around you has gotten these things through ill gains, and so you are justified to take them, rob them, pillage them, steal from them. We will redistribute it, meaning we'll help you steal. I'll give you a cut after we rob them. Communism, just like evil, any form of evil, is parasitic. It cannot survive without a host. It needs to feed on something. And evil is always parasitic as well. It needs to feed on something. And so, the point here from Martin McKenzie, the enemy of criminals is a free, prosperous population. It's true, because criminals cannot function. They cannot live without a free, prosperous population to feed on. And also because, generally speaking, good people will not want that. They will establish among themselves standards, laws to suppress evil, to prevent that type of theft or plunder. If you want to go back to like classical liberals, they would just call it plunder, and prevent that type of evil from arising. And so it is true, actually, that these things are opposed to each other, because evil cannot... let's put it this way. If evil could exist without being parasitic, we would not call it evil, right? If evil could exist without harming others, we would not call it evil. Evil is defined by what it does, damaging those around it. That is how we define it typically. Foggy01, you're saying, do you think we are done with hearing about Epstein files, or are we just now starting to get into it? Oh yes, that's the E word. Let's talk about it, okay? Okay, so I was going to talk about it today, but the reality is not much happened, okay? Basically, last night, the House of Representatives voted, with only one dissenting vote, voted to release all of the Epstein files. Now, we were told there are no Epstein files. Then we're told that they're fake. Then we're told that we can't release them. Now we're being told they have to be released. Make of that as you will. They're going to release the Epstein files. Congress, or the House of Representatives, just passed it, right? The one guy who voted against it said because he believes that the problem they're doing is they want to, in the current state, they want to release it completely unredacted. So the names of victims will be there, the names of innocent people will be there, as well as the names of those accused. And, in America, we have innocent till proven guilty. And, if you've not been criminally charged with something and you want to have a document coming out accusing people of the worst crimes probably known to man, basically anybody Epstein would have put in his files, I guess, and accused is now going to be seen as guilty. He was saying that, the one guy voted against it said on that it will set a new precedent of how information is released in a way that violates the basic rights of people, victims and otherwise. But regardless, that was one guy. The rest of Congress voted to pass it. And now it has to go to the Senate. If the Senate passes it, as is, it'll go to Trump's desk, and Trump said he's going to sign it. Maybe he will. We'll see how the Senate goes with it. They tend to be the more difficult part on getting things like, on passing things. The House a little easier. But given the fact that this was a mass have we ever seen something this bipartisan where there's only one dissenting vote? I don't know. So if it maintains that same bipartisan nature, because you kind of look bad if you vote against it, let's be honest, it's going to pass. Now, there's a few arguments going around. Some people say, well, Trump is on the Epstein files. I've investigated. Okay, let me just be blunt with you. I've investigated this. So he's not. He would be in writing, but he was not on. There's no evidence. I'll explain. I will give you all the full story that nobody's telling you. There was that big story where a girl had actually come out and accused Trump, right? There was the Trump accuser. She was an Epstein victim. Basically, the whole case had been dropped. More recently, she killed herself, right? And people are saying, was this an inside job or whatever? So I interviewed, and I never released it because there was nothing there. So the family of the alleged victim hired a private investigator. I don't know if he'd care if I say his name, Mr. Opperman, right? He was a private investigator. He doesn't like Trump one bit, but he's a good guy. I know him. He's a good guy. He was the private investigator hired by the family to investigate the whole case. He doesn't like Trump, but if you go by the evidence, there was no evidence. There was no evidence. I went through it. I went through trying to figure out if there were any valid claims. I found nothing. There is no evidence that Trump did anything wrong. That is the reality of it. And the complicated thing, I think, is if they want to release the files, it depends what files they have, because if they say Trump flew with Epstein, not on the Lolita Express, but I think he flew from like Florida to New York before Trump banned him from Mar-a-Lago, that would be on there, and obviously Epstein would have him on the list, but not as an allegation of wrongdoing. You see what I mean? And so that's where the gray area is. There's a lot of false information here. While I'm on it too, I'll also address one more thing. People are saying Epstein was a Mossad agent, that he was working for Israel. Look, if that's the case, I just tell you. I investigated it. There's no evidence on it. Let me tell you what the evidence is. So the allegation from that goes to Ghislaine Maxwell's father, right? Can't remember, Robert Maxwell. So Robert Maxwell, the allegation was that as his funeral, there were Mossad agents all over the place. And that was the allegation. What is the reality of it? I investigated it. That claim comes from one book, and that book did not have any valid sources. That's the truth of it. Okay? But people took that book with no valid sources, making an unsubstantiated claim, to say Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, thereby Epstein. I've gone the extra mile. I've even read the FBI documents from Epstein's first conviction. Before that, actually, not many people know this. Robert Maxwell was under investigation by the federal government during the Cold War because he was a suspected Soviet agent. And he ran a magazine that was a suspected front operation of the Soviet Union. Now, the media would tell you there was no evidence. They dropped the case because they found no evidence. That's not what the documents state. The documents state they actually had a lot of evidence. They just didn't have enough to convict him. They believed he was a Soviet agent. That's the reality of it. Okay. And anyways, I know people don't like hearing this stuff because there's a lot of rumors going around, right? What ends up happening is that somebody says, hey, there's a book that says this. And then your next talking head says, well, if a book says it, I heard this. Then the next person says, this is what's happening. All these people are saying it. And then you have all these people saying, well, that guy said it too, and that guy said it too, and that guy said it too. So it must be true. And before you know it, everyone says, oh, you know, that he was this agent, and he was this, and that guy's on the files. And it's just not true, frankly, right? Look, I'm not that big on carrying one side or the other on the Israel issue. It's just not a big thing for me, to be honest. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. News update, I'm late on it. The Senate already approved the Epstein bill, and it's heading to Trump's desk. That was quick. So we'll find out. We're all going to find out. All right? We'll see if Trump signs it. Trump says he will, and he's probably going to do it. So walking back a little bit, it's already passed by House and Senate. So Epstein files are going to be released. We'll see what's in it. You got to pass it to see what's in it. We're going to find out. Right? All right. If you see some public figures like disappear, like, you know, I'm going to go for a long walk tonight, and like, you know, you hear like a car skid off and then like an airplane fly. They might be going to like Cancun or something, or I don't know, somewhere else. Keep an eye out. It's going to be some interesting times ahead. I can say in my analysis what's going to happen. You're going to have a lot of people facing very massive allegations. I do think personally that Epstein was a child sex trafficker. And I think, frankly, based on the evidence, I do think that what we've been shown publicly is probably the tip of the iceberg. I don't know. I think that based on what we've been told over the years, what I've read. But things are about to get interesting, so strap in and get ready for the ride, because you're watching Crossroads and we tell it like it is here, right? Also, folks, that said, tonight we have a new documentary coming out. That's The Framing of Charlie Kirk. And it's called Truth Under Fire, The Framing of Charlie Kirk. The documentary comes out 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and then afterwards, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm going to do a special live Q&A. We can talk about the documentary, or like we usually do, anything you all want to talk about. Charlie Kirk, Turning Point, the media hit piece machine. You want to talk about any of the rumors going around, we can talk about that too. So join me tonight. First of all, 6 p.m. Eastern Time for the documentary premiere, and then 9 p.m. For the special edition live Q&A. The link to watch that is in the description below this video. You do not need to pay any money to watch it. It's free to watch. It's on Epoch TV, epochtv.com. And if you want to watch it and you're not already on Epoch TV, you just need to give an email address or something like that. It's not that big of a deal. And hey, look, you're supporting my work if you want to subscribe also. So that said, I'll see y'all tonight. In the meantime, thank you so much for being here. And as always, I'll see you tonight. And take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.